A bill to allocate a new $60.7 billion aid to Ukraine package has been approved in the U.S. House of Representatives. Next, it will go to the Senate for consideration and then to Biden for signature. But this is a formality. The money will be distributed as follows: $23.2 billion to the American military-industrial complex to replenish the arsenal transferred to Ukraine, $13.8 billion, again to the American military-industrial complex for the production of new weapons for the needs of the armed forces of Ukraine and to replenish U.S. reserves, $11.3 billion, financing of current Pentagon operations in the region, it is not clear where, $7.8 billion, financial assistance to Ukraine in credit, $4.7 billion, other expenses. Now let's look at accounting. The project is called Aid to Ukraine, but this is a sign to throw a bone to the already rejoicing Ukrainians, but in fact the money was allocated for the American military-industrial complex. Most likely, this is where the consensus of Democrats and Republicans was found. Due to the support of Ukraine, the U.S. warehouses are empty. There is an urgent need to strengthen defenses and replenish supplies against the background of the possible fall of Kiev. The indication at each point in Ukraine should not be distracting. Out of almost $60.7 billion, Ukraine will receive only $7.8 billion, and that will be in debt. This is important for understanding that for the sake of this amount, Zelensky was in a hurry to introduce additional mobilization in Ukraine, pushing through the tightening of the law on mobilization and ending demobilization. Ukraine provides soldiers. The United States provides weapons and ammunition. The rest is $23.2 billion purely for the military-industrial complex. Another $11.3 billion supposedly to cover what will be loaned to Kiev. Ukraine is bankrupt. Neither today nor tomorrow will Ukraine be able to pay off the debts, and military factories need money for production. They are giving away the old to Ukraine. They will make something new for themselves. Zelensky may also receive something from the items for current Pentagon operations in the region and other expenses. What will they give to Ukraine? HIMARS and ATACMS, M777 howitzers and ammunition for them, armored personnel carriers MaxPro MRAP and M113, M1 Abrams tanks. Stolberg said, attacks on military targets on Russian territory are legitimate. This means they will focus on targets deep into Russia. What should Russia be prepared for? Attacks will be made on airfields, on the rear zone, on forward positions. There will be more drones flying over the Black Sea and Russian cities, and we can also expect RDK sorties. Will $8 billion change the situation at the front? No. The Russian economy is afloat. It has no problems with money and are showing strong growth. The army has become more combat ready than at the beginning of the Northern Military District. The Russian military-industrial complex is well funded and is already working at full capacity, providing the front with all the necessary weapons and ammunition. If you need to increase it, you don't need 6-month funding. Surplus income will provide the military with money, but the United States has yet to ramp up production. How long will it take? The country with the largest debt in the world gave money for war to the country with the highest death rate on the planet. And supplies from warehouses that are available will not change the situation either. So who should fight? Ukrainians do not want to die for Zelensky. Forced mobilization will not make soldiers out of them. More meat, more losses for the Ukrainian armed forces. So why is United States helping Ukraine? American leaders said that the war in Ukraine is the best investment. This is why they give money, pursuing two main goals. If possible, squeeze maximum profit from Ukraine and kill as many Ukrainians as possible. People are the main resource. The fewer Ukrainians Russia gets, the better. The more destruction there is, the more expensive the restoration. contain the Russian army. Ukraine must survive until the U.S. presidential elections. Defeat will greatly damage the image of the current president.
Wait, do you think that this emergency meeting at the Kremlin has anything to do with this massive tranche of money flowing in?
No, I don't think so, because the Russians have learned how our system works. And this money, most of it is a gift to donors and people inside the United States who have an interest in defense. Now, what do I mean by that? Most of the money will never reach Ukraine. It will be used to replenish existing stocks that have now been emptied into Ukrainian hands. It will pay for things that have yet to be produced by assembly lines. So I don't think the Russians are particularly worried about that. I think that this is another demonstration of the loyalty and fealty of many, many members, to most members, frankly, to their donors. They're waving whatever flag the donor tells them to. And, keep in mind, most of these people on the Hill, they don't know anything about Russia. They know nothing about Ukraine or Eastern Europe. These are all domestic politicians that'll do whatever they think it takes to get reelected. There were only 21 members of the House that voted against the massive funding bill for both, over $90 billion for both Ukraine, Israel, and obviously Taiwan. And they did so because they said, until we've closed our borders and addressed our national security needs and restored the rule of law here at home, we're not sending any more money overseas. And of course, that makes infinite sense. But there were only 21. So I think if you can turn to your research staff, if you've got one, and put them to work to find out who's paying each of these individuals that voted for the bill what. I'm sure they have all been richly rewarded for their support.
Absolutely.
I remember just a few years ago when President Obama was in power, that Senator Tom Cotton crafted a letter arguing essentially for war with Ukraine, war with Iran. In other words, it was one of these letters that said we need to be more hostile and aggressive towards Iran. Sanctions aren't enough. We need to directly attack them and so forth. He ended up receiving, the day after he circulated that letter, had it signed and brought it to the White House, he ended up receiving $1 million from Bill Kristol's Israeli fund. So I think it's pretty obvious how this works. You say the right things, vote for the right way, and you're going to be wealthy. The problem is it doesn't do us any good. So I think we have a Congress that sort of lives on the Washington version of Epstein Island. It's fantasy world, and they're no longer connected seriously to the people that they were elected to represent, because I doubt seriously that if you polled the American people, that anybody was rushing to volunteer to fight in Ukraine or the Middle East. I don't see it. And the notion of fighting on Taiwan, that's absurd.